Welcome to 10 Minutes a Day, a daily reading of the Catholic Church's social encyclicals. Today we continue with Octogesima Adveniens, written in 1971 by Pope Paul VI, on the 80th anniversary of Rerum Novarum. In the face of so many new questions, the Church makes an effort to reflect in order to give an answer, in its own sphere, to men's expectations. If today the problems seem original in their breadth and in their urgency, is man without the means of solving them? It is with all its dynamism that the social teaching of the Church accompanies men in their search. If it does not intervene to authenticate a given structure or to propose a ready-made model, it does not thereby limit itself to recalling general principles. It develops through reflection applied to the changing situations of this world under the driving force of the gospel as the source of renewal when its message is accepted in its totality and with all its demands. It also develops with the sensitivity proper to the Church, which is characterized by a disinterested will to serve and by attention to the poorest. Finally, it draws upon its rich experience of many centuries, which enables it, while continuing its permanent preoccupations, to undertake the daring and creative innovations which the present state of the world requires. There is a need to establish a greater justice in the sharing of goods, both within national communities and on the international level. In international exchanges, there is a need to go beyond relationships based on force in order to arrive at agreements reached with the good of all in mind. Relationships based on force have never, in fact, established justice in a true and lasting manner, even if at certain times the alteration of positions can often make it possible to find easier conditions for dialogue. The use of force, moreover, leads to the setting in motion of opposing forces, and from this springs a climate of struggle which opens the way to situations of extreme violence and to abuses. But, as we have often stated, the most important duty in the realm of justice is to allow each country to promote its own development, within the framework of a cooperation free from any spirit of domination, whether economic or political. The complexity of the problems raised is certainly great, in the present intertwining of mutual dependences. Thus it is necessary to have the courage to undertake a revision of the relationships between nations, whether it is a question of the international division of production, the structures of exchanges, the control of profits, the monetary system, without forgetting the actions of human solidarity, to question the models of growth of the rich nations and change people's outlooks so that they may realize the prior call of international duty, and to renew international organizations so that they may increase in effectiveness. Under the driving force of new systems of production, national frontiers are breaking down, and we can see new economic powers emerging. The multinational enterprise, which by the concentration and flexibility of their means can conduct autonomous strategies which are largely independent of the national political powers, and therefore not subject to control from the point of view of the common good. By extending their activities, these private organizations can lead to a new and abusive form of economic domination on the social, cultural, and even political level. The excessive concentration of means and powers that Pope Pius XI already condemned on the 40th anniversary of Rerum Novarum is taking on a new and very real image. Today, men yearn to free themselves from need and dependence. But this liberation starts with the interior freedom that men must find again with regard to their goods and their powers. They will never reach it except through a transcendent love for man, and, in consequence, through a genuine readiness to serve. Otherwise, as one can see only too clearly, the most revolutionary ideologies lead only to a change of masters. Once installed in power in their turn, these new masters surround themselves with privileges, limit freedom, and allow other forms of injustice to become established. Thus, many people are reaching the point of questioning the very model of society, the ambition of many nations, and the competition that sets them in opposition and which carries them along is to attain technological, economic, and military power. This ambition then stands in the way of setting up structures in which the rhythm of progress would be regulated with a view to greater justice, instead of accentuating inequalities and living in a climate of distrust and struggle which would unceasingly compromise peace. It is not here that there appears a radical limitation to economics. Economic activity is necessary, and if it is at the service of man, it can be a source of brotherhood and a sign of providence. It is the occasion of concrete exchanges between man, of rights recognized, of services rendered, and of dignity affirmed in work. Though it is often a field of confrontation and domination, it can give rise to dialogue and foster cooperation. Yet it runs the risk of taking up too much strength and freedom. This is why the need is felt to pass from economics to politics. It is true that in the term politics, many confusions are possible and must be clarified, but each man feels that in the social and economic field, both national and international, the ultimate decision rests with political power. Political power, which is a natural and necessary link for ensuring the cohesion of the social body, must have as its aim the achievement of the common good. While respecting the legitimate liberties of individuals, families, and subsidiary groups, it acts in such a way as to create, effectively and for the well-being of all, the conditions required for attaining man's true and complete good, including his spiritual end. It acts within the limits of his competence, which can vary from people to people and from country to country. It always intervenes with care for justice and with devotion to the common good, for which it holds final responsibility. It does not, for all that, deprive individuals and intermediary bodies of the field of activity and responsibility which are proper to them, and which leads them to collaborate in the attainment of this common good. In fact, the true aim of all social activity should be to help individual members of the social body, but never to destroy or absorb them. According to the vocation proper to, is the political power must know how to stand aside from particular interests in order to view its responsibility with regard to the good of all men, even going beyond national limits. To take politics seriously at its different levels, local, regional, national, and worldwide, is to affirm the duty of man, of every man, to recognize the concrete reality and the value of the freedom of choice that is offered to him, to seek to bring about both the good of the city and of the nation and of mankind. Politics are a demanding manner, but not the only one, of living the Christian commitment to the service of others. Without, of course, solving every problem, it endeavors to apply solutions to the relationships men have with one another. The domain of politics is wide and comprehensive, but is not exclusive. An attitude of encroachment, which would tend to set up politics as an absolute value, would bring serious danger. While recognizing the autonomy of the reality of politics, Christians who are invited to take up political activity should try to make their choices consistent with the gospel, and, in framework of a legitimate plurality, to give both personal and collective witness to the seriousness of their faith by effective and disinterested service of men. The passing to the political dimension also expresses a demand made by the man of today, a greater sharing in responsibility and in decision-making. This legitimate aspiration becomes more evident as the cultural level rises, as the sense of freedom develops, and as man becomes more aware of how, in a world facing uncertain future, the choices of today already condition the life of tomorrow. In Mater et Magistra, Pope John the 23rd stressed how much the admittance to responsibility is a basic demand of man's nature, a concrete exercise of his freedom, and a path to his development, and he showed how, in economic life, and particularly in enterprise, this sharing responsibilities should be ensured. Today, the field is wider and extends to the social and political sphere in which a responsible sharing in responsibility and in decisions must be established and strengthened. Admittedly, it is true that the choices proposed for a decision are more and more complex. The considerations that must be borne in mind are numerous, and foreseeing of the consequences involves risk, even if new sciences strive to enlighten freedom at these important moments. However, although limits are sometimes called for, these obstacles must not slow down the giving of wider participation in working out decisions, making choices, and putting them into practice. In order to counterbalance increasing technocracy, modern forms of democracy must be devised, not only making it possible for each man to become informed and to express himself, but also by involving him in a shared responsibility. Thus, human groups will gradually begin to share and live as communities. Thus, freedom, which too often asserts itself as a claim for autonomy by opposing the freedom of others, will develop in its deepest human reality to involve itself and to spend itself in building up active and lived solidarity. But for the Christian, it is by losing himself in God, who sets him free, that man finds true freedom, renewed in the death and resurrection of the Lord.